We accomplished it 6 times. Tales of betrayal on Reddit. A true story of emotional conflict. Welcome to the Betrayer Revealed. It may surprise you to learn that more than 90% of our viewers choose not to subscribe. If this video resonates with you, consider subscribing and giving that like button a gentle tap. Our aim is to reach 500 likes on this piece. Let us embark on the narrative of today. Never did I imagine that an event such as this would unfold in my life. When one embarks on the journey of marriage, there exists a vision of an idyllic life, a narrative that seems destined to unfold seamlessly. You believe the connection you have with your partner is indestructible, that no force could ever come between you. I was just like everyone else. I believed I was in love, or at least that's what I convinced myself. I possessed a life that filled me with pride. Once I was in a stable marriage with a fulfilling job and home. Yet, as I would soon discover, life often unfolds in ways that defy simplicity. It began with the utmost simplicity. Several months back, I experienced a profound sense of disconnection from my husband, unlike anything I had encountered previously. Our marriage had flourished for several years, and in the beginning it felt like a dream come true. We shared our aspirations, envisioned our future, and crafted a life together that we both felt was unshakable. Yet, as the days unfolded, the cadence of our existence began to dominate, and we found ourselves drifting apart, almost imperceptibly. The small details started to hold greater significance than they ought to. The exchanges dwindled, and when we engaged in conversation, it resembled more of a series of business transactions than genuine exchanges of meaning. It wasn't that my love for him had faded. I certainly did. Yet, an elusive element lingered in the shadows. It eluded my grasp, a fleeting thought just out of reach. Yet, an unshakable sense of emptiness began to take root in my heart. I attempted to dismiss it, shoving it deep within, persuading myself that all would turn out fine. It was at that moment I encountered him. The setting was a work event. During a challenging period with my husband, I found myself grappling to maintain equilibrium in all aspects of my life. My responsibilities were piling up, and I could sense the weight of it all becoming too much to bear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself unprepared for anything beyond the mundane. I never believed I was in search of anything either. Yet, there are moments when life surprises you with the unexpected. In that instant, everything seemed to align perfectly. He was known as Elliot. He wasn't precisely the type I would have anticipated feeling drawn to, yet there was an undeniable quality about him. He possessed a captivating charm, an intellect that shone brightly, and an air of confidence that was both striking and gentle. Our conversation that night was fleeting, lacking the substance to warrant any noteworthy mention. We engaged in conversation about our professional lives, explored our common interests, and shared moments of laughter. Yet it hardly crossed my mind. In the weeks that followed, our paths intertwined once again on several occasions. It began to settle into a familiar pattern. Easy greetings, light conversation, and the rare shared coffee break at lunchtime. Elliot exuded kindness and thoughtfulness, his very presence infusing the world around him with a lively, radiant energy. He brought a revitalizing spirit to a realm that had begun to feel monotonous. He heard me with an attentiveness I hadn't experienced in ages. It wasn't that my husband was inattentive. Rather, there existed a subtle distinction. Elliot's focus remained unwavering. He remained unfazed by the allure of his phone or the weight of life's demands. In that moment, it felt as though the universe faded away, leaving only our words in the silence. And for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt acknowledged. We forged a friendship. Thus began the journey. Two souls intertwining in the simplicity of shared moments, engaging in conversations that traverse the depths of existence, touching upon everything and yet nothing at all. I never anticipated it would evolve beyond that point. I reassured myself of my commitment, reminding myself that I had a husband, and I was resolute in my intention to protect him from any harm. I adored him, I truly did, despite the imperfections that surrounded us. I found myself increasingly drawn to conversations with Elliot, or so I believed. It was innocuous. Yet, as our conversation deepened, an unexpected realization began to dawn on me. I noticed a growing connection between us that I couldn't ignore. Initially, I attempted to brush them aside. I attempted to distance myself, convincing my mind that it was merely loneliness, that this was simply a fleeting moment. In the end, I was not a bad person. I wasn't on the lookout for another person. Yet, there are moments when existence compels you to grapple with truths you would prefer to avoid. Elliot was unlike anyone I had encountered previously. His presence exuded a warmth that enveloped me, instilling a sense of comfort and safety. He brought a sense of being truly understood that I hadn't experienced in years. With the passage of time, our dialogues delved into profound depths. We shared stories of our lives, reminiscing about our childhoods and exploring our dreams. In our shared moments of vulnerability, I discovered a closeness with him that surpassed the bond one felt with my own husband. A sense of guilt washed over me. A sense of confusion washed over me. Uncertainty enveloped me, leaving me questioning both my actions and the motivations behind them. Yet, it was unfolding before my eyes, and I could no longer turn a blind eye to the truth. An undeniable connection lingered between Elliot and me, a presence that could not be ignored. It transcended mere physical attraction, although that element undeniably existed. It was an emotional connection, a bond that appeared to emerge effortlessly, as if it had been destined to unfold for ages. The weight of guilt pressed down, overwhelming and inescapable. Two would go home and pretend everything was okay, hoping the tension would ease over time. I would smile, share the details of my day, and embrace him at night, all the while aware that a fragment of my heart was captivated by another. I felt emotionally torn between two different realities, and the burden of it was beginning to suffocate me. I hoped the emotions would pass, but instead they grew stronger. It only intensified, if anything. Elliot and I began to craft reasons to linger in each other's company. At times, it could be as uncomplicated as a brief coffee interlude amidst the midday meal. At other moments, we would engage in lengthier discussions following our workday. Though we never ventured into the realm of physical boundaries, the depth of our emotional connection was unmistakable. Anticipation filled my days as I eagerly awaited our conversations, marking the calendar with each passing moment until I could see him once more. Filled me with fear. A moment arrived when I understood that a decision lay before me. The relentless turmoil of confusion and guilt had become unbearable, compelling me to seek a way out. I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating my desires. Should I face the reality of my marriage and the emotions I had buried deep within, or would I choose to persist along this perilous journey with Elliot? I realized that to persist in disregarding my emotions would ultimately bring pain to all those entangled in this situation. I found myself in a state of conflict. My intention was never to cause my husband any pain. I had no desire to fracture the bonds of my family. Yet, I could not ignore the fact that a transformation had taken place within me. It felt as though I was descending further and further into a circumstance I had never envisioned myself encountering. One evening, following an especially profound dialogue with Elliot, I found myself facing my husband. I returned home later than usual, something that had become more common due to my busy schedule. The conversation had slipped from my mind, leaving me with a sense of disconnection, as though we were mere strangers occupying the same space. As I gazed upon him, I recognized the man I had once cherished, yet an insurmountable divide now lay between us, one that I found impossible to cross. In that fleeting instant, a revelation dawned upon me. Uncertainty lingered in my heart, casting doubt on whether my feelings for him had truly endured. I found myself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect him and the unbearable weight of living a falsehood. I had transformed beyond the woman he had once wed, and he had become a stranger, no longer the man I had cherished. I found myself at a crossroads, compelled to unravel the desires that shaped my existence, a journey that required me to face the unsettling reality head-on. Yet, what implications did that hold for my own journey? What implications did that hold for Elliot? Though the answers eluded me, I understood that confronting them was imperative. A nagging sense of unease enveloped me, as if my existence had transformed into an intricate puzzle, one that eluded my grasp. My emotions swirled chaotically, and each attempt to decipher them only led to a tug-of-war within me, pulling in conflicting directions. I found myself caught in the liminal space between two realms. The bond one had forged with my husband, the man to whom I had vowed eternal love, contrasted sharply with this exhilarating yet daunting connection I now felt with Elliot. I found myself utterly lost in this situation. How could I possibly decide between my husband, my companion for so many years, and a man I had only just encountered, yet felt an irresistible attraction to? My intention was never to cause pain to anyone. I found myself grappling with the weight of loyalty, unwilling to betray the trust of my husband. Yet, I found it impossible to overlook the connection that was blossoming between Elliot and me. It was more than a mere moment of infatuation. It was an inexplicable depth, a sensation that eluded my attempts at explanation. Recall that one evening, seated at home after dinner with my husband, sensing that I was worlds apart from him, we nestled together on the couch, the glow of the television flickering before us. Yet my mind drifted far from the images playing out on the screen. Thoughts of Elliot danced through my mind, refusing to settle. I found myself lost in thoughts about whether he was contemplating me, what activities occupied his time, and the possibilities that could unfold if I allowed this bond between us to deepen. My husband, in stark contrast, appeared utterly unaware of the tempest swirling within me. He had always exuded kindness and love, yet an unspoken shift had occurred between us, leaving me at a loss for words on how to address it with him. Each attempt left me grappling with a silence, as if the words were ensnared within, refusing to escape. How could I express to him that my feelings had shifted, and I was uncertain if I loved him in the same way anymore? How could I confess that another had ensnared my focus in a manner I couldn't dismiss? There were instances when the weight of my guilt became so overwhelming that I found myself unable to meet his gaze. It was clear to me that he was worthy of more. He was a decent man, yet he had transformed into someone unrecognizable from the person I had first encountered. We had indeed evolved, yet in that evolution, we had drifted apart in ways that left me at a loss for how to mend the rift. There were moments when he would reach out for affection, a hug or a kiss, and I would comply, yet it felt empty, as if I were merely performing a ritual, fulfilling an obligation that weighed heavily on my heart. And yet, uncertainty loomed over me, casting doubt on my ability to mend the situation. The most challenging aspect was that my emotions for Elliot seemed utterly incomprehensible. He didn't fit the mold of what I typically found appealing. He didn't embody the ideal I had envisioned for a partner. Yet, there was an undeniable quality about him, a sense of comfort and ease that enveloped the moment. It felt as though he perceived me in a manner that no one else ever had. Our silence spoke volumes, a comfortable companionship that required no constant chatter. Merely existing in one another's company sufficed. His laughter, his smile, the way he gazed at me as if I held significance, it enveloped me in a warmth that banished the shadows of invisibility, transforming my existence from mere survival into something vibrant and alive. As I delved deeper into my time with Elliot, a haze of confusion enveloped me, intensifying my inner turmoil. He embodied all my desires, yet I found myself unable to overlook the promises I had made to my husband. It was difficult to think about moving on after building so much together. I understood that love transcended mere excitement and the fluttering of butterflies. It was a journey of crafting something collaboratively as the days unfolded. Yet, how could I possibly disregard the magnetic draw I experienced toward Elliot? How could I feign that all was well when I was utterly adrift in my feelings? On a particular evening, I resolved to engage Elliot in conversation regarding the matter. I found it impossible to continue oscillating without uttering a word. I could no longer allow this to fester within me, constructing a barrier that separated me from those around me. We gathered at a quaint cafe following the day's work. In that moment, it was merely the two of us, and for the very first time, uncertainty enveloped me. I recall the moment, seated opposite him, feeling the burden of it all pressing down on me. My heart raced as I parted my lips to utter a sound, yet the words eluded me, reluctant to take form. What would be the best way to convey all of this to him? How could I express to him the fear that gripped me, the uncertainty that clouded my actions? "I don't know what's happening between us," I said, my voice quivering just a bit. Yet, I find myself unable to overlook it any longer. I have made my attempts, Elliot. I truly have. Yet, I cannot feign indifference to the significance of what is unfolding. I am in a committed relationship, and my intention is to avoid causing any pain to others. Yet, I find myself at a loss when it comes to halting the emotions I harbor for you. Elliot fell into a contemplative silence. His gaze fixed on me with an intensity that felt almost palpable. His unreadable nature sent a chill of fear coursing through me. What thoughts occupied his mind? Did he share those same feelings? Or was I merely a fleeting presence in his life, a moment destined to fade from his memory? At last, he found his voice. "I have been experiencing similar sentiments, yet I hesitated to impose on you. It was never my intention to put you in a position where you had to decide between us. Yet, I cannot refute the fact that you hold a place in my heart. I grasp the intricacies of this situation. I wish to spare you any further suffering or complicate matters further. Yet, I find myself reluctant to forfeit the bond we share." His words lingered in the atmosphere, weighty and disquieting. A lump began to swell in my throat. What implications did that hold for me? What implications did that hold for my marriage? "I don't know what to do," I whispered, my gaze fixed on my hands. "My affection for my husband knows no bounds. I do, yet I find myself questioning whether my feelings for him still resonate with love. I can't shake the feeling that I'm a terrible person for even uttering those words." Elliot's eyes softened, and he leaned in closer, his hand resting softly on mine. "You are not devoid of goodness. You're merely human. Life unfolds in intricate layers, and at times, emotions shift unexpectedly. It does not define you as bad or wrong." Yet, the reality was that I sensed it wasn't quite so straightforward. Uncertainty loomed over me, casting doubt on my readiness to confront the challenges ahead. I found myself grappling with the thought of causing pain to my husband, the steadfast companion who had stood by me through the years, a man who truly deserved none of this turmoil. Yet, the guilt, the confusion, and the yearning I harbored for Elliot began to gnaw at my very core. I departed the cafe that evening, my mind as murky as it had been upon arrival. In truth, I found myself feeling more adrift than I ever had before. What was I meant to do? Was I meant to decide between two existences, two affections, two destinies? Could I truly return to my husband after everything that transpired? Is it possible to wipe away the emotions I once held for Elliot? Was I destined to confront the repercussions of the emotions I had permitted myself to experience? Silence lingered, a pause that held its breath, waiting for a response that had yet to arrive. Yet, there was one certainty that lingered in my mind. I found it impossible to continue existing in that liminal space. The moment came when I had to make a choice. I found myself face to face with the truth, no matter what that truth entailed or the price I might have to pay for it. The days that ensued after that conversation with Elliot passed in a haze. It was as if I were enveloped in a dense mist, my mind clouded and my concentration slipping away. My thoughts continually wandered back to the same inquiries. What was I meant to do? What steps can I take to mend it all? And perhaps most crucially, was there anything I could mend at all? I made an effort to feign that all was well. I navigated the familiar rhythms of my existence, commuting to work, returning to my husband, and engaging in the routines that had long defined my days. Yet, everything seemed to have lost its familiar essence. Each smile exchanged with my husband carried the weight of deception. Each caress, each utterance felt like an act, and I found myself weary from the charade. It was clear to me that he perceived an underlying tension, even if he chose to remain silent about it. Once, I wore my heart openly, a canvas for all to see, but now I found myself concealing fragments of my soul from him, and it filled me with disdain. One evening, after dinner, my husband and I found ourselves nestled in the living room, just as we often did. Typically, we would settle in to watch a show or share the details of our day, but this evening unfolded in a different manner. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a subtle discomfort that enveloped the space. As my husband recounted the events of his day at work, I found my mind drifting, barely registering his words. My mind was a tempest, swirling with thoughts, each one heavy with the burden of guilt that pressed down on me like a ton of bricks. He halted briefly, his gaze fixed on me, a hint of worry etched across his features. "You've seemed a bit distant lately," he murmured gently. "Is all well?" I felt an overwhelming urge to unleash my voice, to lay bare the depths of my heart, to reveal the emotions I had kept locked away. I felt the urge to articulate my confusion about how we arrived at this point, to express my uncertainty about the path to resolution. Yet the words remained trapped within me, unspoken. Uncertainty loomed over me, leaving me at a loss for where to begin. "I'm fine," I said, mustering a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. "Perhaps it's simply weariness that envelopes me." Though he appeared skeptical, he chose not to pursue the matter further. He merely nodded and returned to his conversation, as if nothing was amiss. Yet, deep down, I understood it was not the case. It had been quite some time since then. The days that followed unfolded like a tempest of clashing feelings. I endeavored to separate myself from Elliot, to carve out some distance, yet it proved to be an insurmountable challenge. Each time I laid eyes on him, I experienced that familiar tug, that undeniable bond that was nearly impossible to overlook. My heart and mind seemed to be locked in a fierce battle, leaving me utterly lost on how to broker a truce between the two. On a particular afternoon, I found myself at a pivotal moment of reckoning. Continuing to live like this was no longer an option for me. A decision lay before me. I found myself at a crossroads, where I had to confront the repercussions of my choices or turn my back on it all. I found it impossible to balance two separate existences. It was ripping me to shreds. I reached out to Elliot, requesting that he join me for a meeting. This moment transcended mere emotions. It was a quest for clarity, a search for resolution. I understood that a choice lay before me, one that would reveal my true desires and the sacrifices I was prepared to make. We found ourselves once again at the familiar cafe, the very place where our previous conversations had unfolded. The moment when all began to fall apart. As I settled into my seat opposite him, an unmistakable sense washed over me. This conversation was destined to unfold in a way unlike any other. Contemplation has occupied my mind. I started, my voice trembling. I find myself at a crossroads, unable to continue down this path. I can no longer endure this state of uncertainty. I must confront the consequences of my actions. Elliot regarded me with a gaze that was both earnest and empathetic. "Could you clarify what you mean?" he inquired softly. "I mean that I've been living a lie," I said, my eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been struggling to be honest with myself and those around me. I have allowed myself to be carried away by a situation that I should have never permitted to unfold. I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter." Elliot remained quiet, yet the pain in his eyes spoke volumes. I realized that I had caused him pain as well, by permitting this situation to persist for far too long. Yet, I was acutely aware that I could not continue along this trajectory. "I adore my husband," I went on, my voice trembling with emotion. I wasn't sure where I stood emotionally, but I knew I had to face it honestly. I was overwhelmed by the emotional conflict I felt and needed clarity. A decision awaits me. I must find a way to cease the pain I inflict on those around me, as well as on myself. Elliot extended his arm across the table, his fingers gently enveloping mine. "You don't need to decide anything at this moment," he said gently. "Yet, I hold you in high regard for your honesty, both with yourself and with me. Yet, I understand that I must return and confront my reality, confront the man I wed, and determine what lies ahead. I am indebted to him to that extent. I am deserving of at least that." Elliot nodded, his eyes sharp yet brimming with empathy. "I will stand by your side, regardless of the choices you make. However, I hold your decision in high regard. It is essential to prioritize what truly serves your best interests." Uncertainty clouded my mind as I pondered whether I was truly making the right choice. Yet, in that instant, I realized I must turn my back on the circumstances I had fashioned. I was compelled to confront the reality, no matter how excruciating it could prove to be. I could no longer dwell in the shadows, paralyzed by indecision. Confronting the reality of my marriage and my emotions was the sole path ahead, regardless of the destination it might unveil. That evening, I returned home burdened by a weighty heart. Yet, a feeling of relief lingered as well. A decision had been made by me. I embarked on the initial journey of healing, seeking the clarity that had eluded me for so long. On that evening, I settled in beside my husband. The dialogue proved to be quite challenging. I revealed it all to him, the emotional chasm that had enveloped me, the swirling confusion within, and the bond one had forged with Elliot. I conveyed to him that while I lacked all the answers, my dedication to navigating the situation remained unwavering. Uncertainty loomed over us, yet I was acutely aware that honesty was a debt I owed him. It was the most challenging endeavor I had ever undertaken. In his eyes, I witnessed the anguish, the sting of betrayal, and the swirling fog of confusion. Yet, amidst it all, I caught sight of something more, a flicker of hope. Though his words were few that night, it was clear to me that he valued my candor. It represented a modest stride in the journey of reconstruction, be it in the realm of healing our union or the realization that our trajectories may diverge. The ensuing days unfolded with challenging dialogues, deep reflection, and the poignant trials of uncovering one's true self. Though I lacked all the answers and the future remained uncertain, I was acutely aware that I had embarked on the initial journey toward rectifying the situation. I confronted the repercussions of my decisions, grappling with the choices I had embraced. It was neither simple nor flawless, yet it held an undeniable authenticity. Ultimately, the future lay shrouded in uncertainty, yet I had come to understand that often, the sole path ahead is to confront the truth, regardless of its difficulty, and to embrace honesty with oneself and others. It marked not the conclusion of my tale, but rather the dawn of a fresh chapter, one filled with opportunities for learning, growth, and the hopeful pursuit of mending the fragments of my heart that had been shattered throughout the journey.